With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown. Our top stories: Nevis's water and energy resilience, a systematic approach to development. Geothermal energy paramount as Nevis forges path to sustainable future. Uroy Harris sentenced for causing death by careless driving. Guyana Defense Force to monitor Venezuela's act of aggression. St. Lucia opposition leader questions CARICOM trade benefits as regional leaders defend unity. Internationally, NATO's mission should be rewritten amid global threats, says military analyst. Now, the details. The impact of climate change continues to challenge the Twin Island Federation, making reliable water and energy infrastructure crucial for sustainable development. During his monthly press conference on June 24, 2025, Premier of Nevis, the Honourable Mark Brantley, addressed recent advancements in Nevis's water and energy sectors, including new well drilling efforts and their integration into the existing systems. Nevis has been experiencing reduced rainfall, a direct consequence of climate change, which has heightened the water demand, particularly in the expanding agriculture and tourism sectors. Historically, rainfall has been the primary source of potable water, and shifts in weather patterns have significantly impacted the water supply. Premier Brantley highlighted the government's methodical approach to combating water scarcity.
We have since 2013, when this government got back into office, we have invested now somewhere close to 50 million EC dollars in our water infrastructure.
This investment has focused on a multi-phased strategy to ensure a consistent and high-quality water supply for residents and businesses. The first phase involved re-engineering the island's water distribution network. Outdated cast iron pipes were systematically replaced with more advanced polyurethane pipes, and the diameter of pipes in areas experiencing low pressure was increased to enhance water flow. This extensive underground work, often unseen by the public, represents a substantial investment.
A lot of times when our people say that they don't see anything happening, it's because you drive on what's happening all day, every day. You drive along the road, you're not paying attention that under the road we have invested $30–40 million in pipes and new connections and new connectivity. Just take it for granted.
Following the distribution network upgrade, the second phase concentrated on bolstering water storage capacity across the island. Numerous large aqua stone tanks or storage tanks have been installed on various hillsides, with another tank currently on order for the Morningstar area. This systematic approach ensures that newly sourced water can be effectively stored and distributed. The third and current phase involves finding more water through the drilling of new wells.
To us, it didn't make any sense to try to find more water first, and then you don't have any way to store the water.
Drilling operations began in July 2024, with water and oil well services out of Trinidad and Tobago contracted to drill 9 wells. 2 wells at Maddens have already been successfully drilled, and pump testing has indicated a significant yield. While the physical pipe connections for these wells to the main island system are complete, the final step involves securing a consistent power supply for the pumps.
The last report we had from Minister Brand was that they were negotiating the cost of that connection with Nevlec, but they had a generator in the meantime. Let me go back, sorry. The connection, because of the pumping, you needed electricity on the site, and so they had a temporary generator there, but they were negotiating with Nevlec to get power to the site in order to run the pumps so that the water from the well could go into the system.
Drilling has now shifted to a third site in Dasent, Gingerland, with plans to move to Brazers thereafter. For the Brazers well, the exact water yield and quality are yet to be determined pending testing.
Water at Brazers, how much water we anticipate getting, I truly don't know. I think that these are situations where they anticipate finding water, but then actual how much water will be produced, they're not yet sure. And of course, the quality of that water, we'll have to test it to make sure it's potable.
In addition to well drilling, Nevis has also made significant strides with desalination technology. A solar-powered desalination plant in Butler's St. James, which was awarded the Best Energy Resilience Project at CREF 2025, is now fully operational and integrated into the water distribution system. This plant can produce up to 60,000 gallons of treated water daily, significantly enhancing water security, especially during periods when other wells might face issues. Premier Brantley emphasized the profound impact of reliable utilities on economic development and foreign investment.
We recognize that a major impediment to investment is the lack of proper infrastructure. You can't get a new hotel development. You can't get a major, housing development or anything like that. You can't get even a large factory unless you can give them water, electricity. Unless you can give them roads that they can traverse.
He emphasized that continuous investment in water, electricity, and road networks directly contribute to a favorable investment climate. The Premier noted that investors often inquire about the availability of water and electricity for new developments. If the government fails to provide these basic services, investors face dramatically increased costs, potentially needing to build their own desalination plants or drill private wells. Therefore, the government's investment alleviates this burden and fosters confidence. Regarding electricity, the Nevis electricity company Nevlec has seen significant upgrades.
This administration has bought, I believe in the last decade, we've bought 3 gensets at Nevlec. I know that we got, I believe, 2 sets from Watsilla, brand new, and we had another set that came in that I think had been refurbished. So we bought 3 sets in the last decade and a half. That's significant. One of those generating sets is about $6 million.
Despite these investments, increasing demand means Nevlec operates close to its capacity limits, necessitating further capacity expansion through renewable sources rather than purchasing more engines. Nevis is also actively exploring geothermal potential, which Premier Brantley has described as powerful enough to supply energy to St. Kitts, Nevis, and even neighboring islands, reducing the impact of external shocks and fostering energy independence. Premier Brantley reflected on the transformation in daily life for Nevisians, particularly the younger generation who now take constant access to water for granted.
Younger people don't have no idea of water shutting off and 8 o'clock every night, water gone off, and have to go by the village dam to fill up a bucket with water. We don't have any concept of that. We don't have any concept in Nevis of when water come on, you fill up containers and have all kind of jug and drum and kit in your house full of water. Those days are behind us in Nevis. And so when I said that people take it for granted, all I was meaning to say is that these things are now normal in Nevis. That you have water 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Nobody thinks twice about it.
He concluded by stressing that this state of normalcy is not accidental, but the result of dedicated and substantial government investment in foundational infrastructure, which is critical for attracting significant investment and global attention.
We have been doing, I think, quietly an excellent job here on the island in terms of building out that basic infrastructure. And that foundational infrastructure is critical if you're going to attract significant investment and serious attention from the rest of the world.
The Global Sustainable Islands Summit held in St. Kitts and Nevis drew widespread praise for its focus on sustainability and international cooperation. Premier of Nevis, the Honourable Mark Brantley, reflecting on the summit during his monthly press conference on June 24, 2025, emphasized the transformative potential of Nevis's geothermal energy project, highlighting its role in reshaping the island's economic landscape. While the summit itself did not directly initiate new partnerships or funding, Premier Brantley noted its significant impact in drawing attention to the Nevis geothermal project.
The summit, of course, brought together stakeholders, it brought together policymakers. What I think the summit did was to really shine a spotlight on the geothermal project in Nevis. And let's not pretend. The geothermal project in Nevis is what's driving that narrative, what the people were most interested in that. And what it also did was it provided an opportunity for some who are interested in that project and have already indicated their interest. It provided an opportunity for them to visit and to visit the sites that we are looking at developing geothermal. So we have some of the companies that we hope will bid for the geothermal project, drilling phase, who are here physically, some at the level of their vice president, to look at the site and to make a determination as to how they move forward.
Premier Brantley articulated a bold vision for Nevis, aiming to transition from an overdependence on citizenship by investment and tourism to an energy-based economy. This ambition aligns with the broader Sustainable Island State agenda of St. Kitts and Nevis, a framework designed to guide the nation towards a sustainable future by 2040. Unlike traditional energy-rich nations, Nevis's focus is squarely on renewable energy, leveraging its substantial geothermal potential. Scientists indicate that Nevis alone could generate significantly more electricity than its current consumption, with estimates suggesting that up to 1,000 megawatts of power could be available through geothermal sources. In comparison, the entire Federation's peak consumption is only about 50 megawatts.
And so we are being told that we have some estimates up to 1,000 megawatts, 1 gigawatt of power available through geothermal. And our peak consumption at this point for the entire St. Kitts and Nevis is still only about 50 or so megawatts. So the truth is we'll have a tremendous amount of excess power. And we then start to talk about new industry, power to X, large data centers, green ammonia, green hydrogen, exporting that power to neighboring islands. We have a number of opportunities there.
The International Maritime Organization's push for renewable energies in the shipping industry also presents a significant opportunity for Nevis.
Even in terms of ships, now, as the IMO, the International Maritime Organization, forces the shipping industry to transform because they, of course, are big polluters, and to say to them that they must now use more of renewable energies in the mix, that Nevis again will play a significant role.
The Premier underscored the critical partnership with the federal government, particularly the personal involvement of Prime Minister the Honourable Dr. Terence Drew, as instrumental in securing vital financing.
We have only gotten to where we've gotten because of the personal involvement of Prime Minister Drew, and he and I met during the first week of his becoming Prime Minister, and we committed to this project.
This commitment has already yielded substantial financial support, including a $17 million loan from the Caribbean Development Bank and a $20 million concessionary loan from the Saudi Fund for Development. These funds are crucial for the drilling phase of the project. Furthermore, the Green Climate Fund, GCF, which manages over $15 billion in climate funds, is also involved, with its head, Mafalda Duarte, having recently visited the island. The GCF has pledged additional funding, which is anticipated to help bring the project over the line. The CDB has been a significant supporter of geothermal development in the region through its GeoSmart initiative, aiding countries such as Dominica, Grenada, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, as well as St. Kitts and Nevis. In a critical update, Premier Brantley announced that bids for the geothermal drilling phase are now expected to be opened by June 30th. This follows previous delays, including a round in February 2025 where bids were non-responsive, and a subsequent delay from May to June to accommodate potential bidders who wished to visit the site during the Global Sustainable Islands Summit.
And I'm hopeful that by the next press conference I can make an announcement that the bids have been received and have been opened. And so for me, we're making real progress.
This development marks a significant step towards realizing the long-awaited commencement of the drilling process. The High Court in Basseterre, presided over by Justice Ian Morley, on Tuesday, June 24, 2025, handed down a sentence to Uroy Harris of Newton Ground for the offense of causing death by careless driving. The charge stemmed from a tragic traffic accident on November 8, 2018, which resulted in the death of 89-year-old Olivia Francis in Newton Ground. Harris had previously entered a guilty plea on the charge on January 30th, 2025. Harris received a suspended 6-month sentence, meaning he will not serve time in prison unless he commits another offense within 2 years. He was also disqualified from holding or obtaining a driver's license for 1 year effective June 24th, 2025. In addition to the suspended custodial sentence, a compensation order was issued mandating the payment of EC $65,000 to the deceased's family. The court stipulated that these payments begin on Friday, July 25th, 2025, with monthly installments of $1,800 due on the last Friday of each subsequent month. Failure to adhere to this payment schedule will result in a 12-month term of imprisonment, after which payments must resume. The matter is scheduled for a status review on Friday, December 12th, 2025. In regional news, Guyana Defense Force to monitor Venezuela's act of aggression. News source Guyana reports.
The Chief of Defense Staff of the Guyana Defense Force, Brigadier Omar Khan, has described recent threats by Venezuela as more of political maneuvering than military threats. In a recorded interview released by the GDF, Brigadier Khan stated that Venezuela has increased its aggression against Guyana. but he noted the Guyana Defense Force remains resolute to defend the country's borders.
Venezuela and their claim to the Essequibo is more political theater than a military threat. We, however, are being cautious. As a defense force, we are operating within our defense policy of the dime construct: diplomacy, information, military, and economic. Integral in this process is our partnership. Partnership with the United States, our most important and strategic partner.
Brigadier Khan noted that there are other international partners who value peace and international law that are working with Guyana. On the issue of the capacity of the GDF in comparison to the Venezuelan National Army, Brigadier Khan noted that while the GDF may be smaller in size, it has been using strategy to not only deter but respond to the threats from Caracas.
History would tell us that size does not translate into success. That is why we are focusing on strategy, on technology, and partnership. Military conflict is not in anyone's interests. The claim by Venezuela is political. It should remain there, and the process of the International Court of Justice should be followed.
The Army Chief noted that over the past 5 years, there has been major investments in the defense sector, and that is welcomed.
And this was spread across several areas: technology, training, etc. And if I should tell you, our asset acquisition in the maritime sector, for example, we are soon to receive a ocean patrol vessel along with aerial assets to monitor our airspace on our exclusive economic zone. So yes, we may be smaller, but we are being strategic, we are being smart, and we're being resolute.
In addition, Brigadier Khan noted that the Guyana Defense Force is operating under a military strategy to build, deploy, and operate a smart, modern, and resilient force, not only to defend Guyana, but to also contribute to economic development.
St. Lucia opposition leader questions CARICOM trade benefits as regional leaders defend unity. DBS St. Lucia has that story.
Opposition leader Alan Chastney urged the leaders to consider whether the OECS is truly benefiting from its current trade deals with CARICOM during the 7th sitting of the OECS Assembly in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He also argued whether the sub-region would be better off negotiating new trade arrangements with Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, and Barbados. At Monday's pre-cabinet press briefing, Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre stated that the issue has been discussed before, but declined to comment on the opposition leader's remarks. However, he stressed the need for regional unity driven by the people.
And I'm calling the young people to drive it. They have to drive that unity. We cannot go in our separate ways. What has St. Lucia got in itself, by itself, in the world? We have to understand that there is common ground.
Prime Minister Pierre noted that the OECS is bounded by common external tariffs. He added that a formal derogation would be required if an OECS member state wants to opt out of or remove the application of the CARICOM Common External Tariff.
The entire OECS, the population is not 600,000 people. Think about it. The entire OECS. And St. Lucia has the largest population, 180. Now, as a block, we have 600 people to debate with. As a unit, 185. What do you think how do you think the terms of trade are going to be?
Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Gaston Brown, shared his views with ABS News on opposition leader Alan Chastney's comments. Brown said he supports efforts by regional leaders to realign the system for greater equity, but believes calls for the OECS to exit the bloc are premature. Dominica's Prime Minister, Roosevelt Skerrit, has also expressed his opinion and firmly rejected suggestions that the OECS should consider leaving the Caribbean Community CARICOM. During a press conference after the sitting, Skerrit called for a sincere conversation about the present and future of regional integration. For the DBS News World, Miriam Montoot reporting.
We now bring you these international reports.
Joining me now is Yusuf Alabada. He's a military analyst and former NATO officer. Welcome again to the programme. So this summit in The Hague comes at a time when I think it's fair to say that NATO European countries would perhaps prefer to be talking about Ukraine and Russia and the threat there. Instead, the alliance is being forced to unpack the consequences and the result of the conflict between Iran and Israel, something NATO appears to have almost been a bystander in, judging by how long Donald Trump spoke about it with other NATO alliance members watching on. Does the alliance have any agency whatsoever when it comes to the Middle East?
Yeah, especially when it comes to the Middle East, what you say is very correct, because the NATO has been established to create a security umbrella for the both sides of the Atlantic. For that reason, what is going on inside Iran and in the different parts of the Middle East, mostly not the business of NATO. That is the reason that they are bystanders, what's happening there. But as a country, like pick France, is giving lots of concern what's going on inside Lebanon, inside Syria, etc. For Germany, what is happening inside Iran is very important. But from the perspective of the NATO, without no doubt, NATO's role is very limited in these areas. But also NATO's role is very limited in the Pacific. But Trump administration, also including the Biden administration, they are trying to pull NATO to the Pacific in order to contain China. For that reason, NATO's role should be rewritten again, because the DNA of the war is changing rapidly. The threats are coming from elsewhere. For that reason, should NATO be focused only to the both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, or they should cover all kind of new threats from all over the corner of the world?
Of course, the North Atlantic Alliance was formed as an answer to the Warsaw Pact during the Cold War. You're saying that the threats have widened, they have expanded. Talking about the founding principle of Article 5 of the NATO alliance, that an attack on one is an attack on all. I wonder if you can clarify for us, if a US base in the Middle East is attacked, does that now involve NATO?
I don't think so, because a US base in a Middle East country is not considered as the US soil, because Turkey was attacked inside Syria by the Russian and Syrian airplanes, and 37 soldiers of the Turkish armed forces has been killed by the Russia, but NATO didn't work there. For that reason, if Russia or another party attacks to the US bases, which is not inside the homeland of the United States, probably it will not be considered.
So to clarify, it has to be in a given homeland to activate Article 5.
That is the reason for the first time in the history of NATO, the Article 5 put into effect, which was September 11, because it was inside the United States and terrorist attack to United States. And United States said that I am under attack, so the Article 5 put into effect the first time in the NATO history. But if that attack has happened somewhere else in the Pacific Ocean, probably it would be considered different.
I want to talk about the dynamic between the European NATO heads of state and Donald Trump. Donald Trump compared Israel and Iran to, quote, two kids in a schoolyard fighting. They fight like hell, he said. You can't stop them. Let them fight for about 2-3 minutes, then it's easier to stop them, he said. Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, then responded, then Daddy has to sometimes use strong language. There seems to be little doubt on who is the junior partner in this relationship between the Americans and European NATO allies.
This is true not for this time, but for all the history of NATO. United States is the founder of NATO and the father of that project. For that reason, sometimes such kind of languages can be used, such as the Rutte.
Do you think Jens Stoltenberg would have used that language? Previous chief?
No, but...
Anders Fogh Rasmussen?
Not for the language, but the reality is like that. What the United States desires in NATO, it has already happened. Look at in 2017, when Trump was saying 5%, 4% of the GDPs, everyone was making fun with Trump, and they were denying that they will not increase their spendings. Other than Spain now, everyone accepted Trump's offer.
Yeah, talking about that spending pledge, just to remind our viewers, the big achievement of the summit, of course, is this pledge to spend 5% of GDP by 2035 on military spending, of course. Donald Trump is being praised by Mark Rutte for his leadership in putting pressure on European partners. But some, of course, in Europe don't call that leadership. They call it bullying, including Spain.
Yeah, there are many different countries like that because what Spain perceives as a threat is completely different what Poland perceives threat from Russia. That is the reason Spain doesn't want to spend for the defense issues more than 2%. But Trump is putting hard, otherwise labeling free rider. So no one wants to be a free rider, but what in the NATO issues, Trump has a right. If you are taking the advantage of security umbrella of NATO, then you should pay, or you should stay outside of the NATO. Not maybe 5% immediately. I don't think that the countries will try to spend 5% of their GDPs for defense purposes right now. It will take for many years, something like maybe 5 or 10 years. Although Trump says immediately, especially the Mediterranean countries who has budget deficits, will not be able to pay 5% of their GDPs for the defense purposes. But in anyhow, they will increase their defense spendings if they want an umbrella. Trump says that we are paying all the costs of NATO, almost 65%.
Right.
So American taxpayers will question Trump why we are paying for Europe.
Understood. And of course, who knows where Donald Trump could be in 10 years' time if they do meet those spending requests.
War is always changing as technology advances, and in a bid to increase their country's defence capabilities, NATO leaders have endorsed a big new spending target at a summit in The Hague. NATO members will aim to spend 5% of their economic output on defence, a big increase on the current goal of 2% agreed at a 2014 summit. That's 3.5% of their GDP on core defence, such as troops and weapons, and 1.5% on broader defence and security-related investments, such as cybersecurity, protecting energy pipelines and adapting infrastructure for military vehicles. Hitting these targets could eventually mean spending hundreds of billions of dollars more a year. Doubling down on cyber investment is one of the ways to improve the alliance's defence. That's according to Benjamin Jensen, an international relations and security specialist.
So I think the biggest challenge for NATO on the horizon is the intersection of the low cost of shooting waves and waves of long-range attack drones alongside rapid targeting adjustment using AI and offensive cyber. Russia has proven it will attack NATO member states with cyber any time of the day.
And money could be used strategically. Due to technology, he said, low-cost systems like $1,000 drones can now destroy high-cost assets like planes.
In the ideal case, we would have entire NATO drone brigades like what we see in actually Ukraine, but maybe manned by a multinational battalion or battle group.
Moscow's continued war in Ukraine is one reason, along with concerns about a possible future threat from Russia. That's alongside pressure from US President Donald Trump to boost investment. Europe's preparing for the possibility that Washington will withdraw some of its troops and capabilities. Targets are expected to be met in 2035, but can also be adjusted when they're reviewed in 2029.
Donald Trump, a little earlier, he has rejected a leaked US intelligence report that casts doubt over the success of America's strikes on Iran. I'll talk about that in more detail with Gordon Carrera, the BBC's former security correspondent, here in a moment. But Donald Trump also saying at that news briefing that the US and Iran would be meeting at some stage next week. So let's head to Tel Aviv and to our correspondent Mark Lowen, who's there for us. And Mark, that was very interesting. Donald Trump very open about talks and a meeting with Iran next week. He said we'll be asking for what we asked before, which was no nuclear. So your reading of that?
I have to say, Matthew, there's been no confirmation that we can see at the moment from the Iranian authorities of that meeting. Steve Witkoff, Donald Trump's envoy-in-chief for all the crises in the world, it seems, apparently is having sort of indirect and talks with Tehran, but there's been no official word that we have got so far from Iran corroborating that comment from Donald Trump. But clearly there is so little trust from the Iranian side now, both in Israel and in America, having seen Trump's comment that there was going to be a 2-week window for diplomacy as perhaps some kind of decoy or ruse before American bombers came in. And of course, 2 days before the US and Iran were due to sit down for a 6th round of nuclear negotiations, the Israeli bombing began. So I think that, it's going to be probably quite difficult to get the Iranians back around the negotiating table. And on top of that, you've got to bear in mind, Matthew, that for so long, for decades, the nuclear program has been a symbol of independence and sovereignty for the Iranians, also a negotiating tool with the West. So, if Donald Trump is kind of triumphantly saying that actually that program has been destroyed, well, how much are the Iranians going to want to talk to the Americans at the moment, having been so incredibly damaged by what has happened? I mean, our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette, has sent this report after crossing the border into Iran. She is allowed to report from there on condition that none of her reports are used on the BBC's Persian service. This law from Iranian authorities applies to all international media agencies operating in Iran.
Day 2 of the ceasefire, and despite its shaky start, it seems to be holding, and traffic is starting to return to the streets of Tehran. The city is starting to look like itself, but so many of the cafes, the shops, the government offices are still shut. So many residents fled this city once Israeli attacks started, and they seem to be waiting until the end of the Iranian weekend to see whether it truly holds. But some rhythms of life are returning. The internet is coming back, and with it, the social media platforms are filling up with strongly worded posts. Some Iranians praising their government, others protesting. And this kind of conversation in private and public is certain to intensify. What happens outside also matters too, most of all in Washington with President Trump, but across this region too and far beyond. As enormously relieved as Iranians are that there is a ceasefire, many are also asking, how long will it last?
A rare report from inside Tehran there by Lise Doucette, our chief international correspondent. But Matthew, while the glare over the last 12 days has been on the Iran conflict, let's not forget what is also happening in the other war that Israel is fighting against Hamas in Gaza, where the situation is continuing to deteriorate on a daily basis. Over the 12 days of the Iran-Israel war, 868 people have been killed in Gaza by Israeli fire, many of them while queuing for aid. The situation on the ground absolutely catastrophic, and that mechanism set up by the US and Israel to deliver aid, called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, has been labeled constantly a death trap. Also, the casualties are mounting on the Israeli side. In the last 24 hours, 7 Israeli soldiers were killed by an improvised explosive device blowing up their armored vehicle inside Gaza. And that takes the total number of Israeli soldiers killed since the ground offensive against Hamas in Gaza began to 440. The big question is whether the ceasefire in Iran provides some kind of momentum now, some kind of renewed opportunity for the Israeli government to seek to rein in the war in Gaza and seek a solution there. That is a very, very big question. Donald Trump said that he believes that there will be good news from Gaza in the next few weeks. But then again, he did say that the Ukraine war would end within 24 hours when he took office.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were Nevis's water and energy resilience, a systematic approach to development. Geothermal energy paramount as Nevis forges path to sustainable future. Uroy Harris sentenced for causing death by careless driving. Guyana Defense Force to monitor Venezuela's act of aggression. St. Lucia opposition leader questions CARICOM trade benefits as regional leaders defend unity. Internationally, NATO's mission should be rewritten amid global threats, says military analyst. Thank you for listening.